This deck of cards was compiled to facilitate working through standalone questions dealing with human development and biological influences on behavior. Okay? All right, let's start. The blank reflex occurs when a baby sucks on any object placed in her mouth and helps newborns during the breastfeeding process. So, what reflex is this? That would be the sucking reflex. Also, you have the rooting reflex, where the infant might chew. The blank reflex occurs when a baby reacts to a loud noise by throwing out their arms and legs. So, what reflex is this? That would be the moro reflex, okay? So when the baby hears like a loud noise, like maybe a siren or something outside or a loud bang, their arms and legs flail out in surprise. The blank reflex occurs when a baby closes her hand around whatever touches her palm. So what reflex is this? That would be the grasping reflex, or specifically the palmar grasp reflex, okay? The B blank I reflex is when the sole of a baby's foot is touched, the baby's toes fan out, and her foot curls in. So what responsive reflex is this? That would be the babinski reflex. And here goes a cute baby foot. Someone's touching the sole, this region, and you can see that the toes are fanning out. A T blank N is a substance or environmental factor that can disrupt normative fetal development. So what is this? What type of substance is this? That would be a teratogen. And a teratogen can be alcohol, pills, and like the flip side said, any number of adverse environmental factors. A C blank S sectional design involves examination of the same factor of interest in different groups of individuals who vary in age. So what type of study design is this? That would be a cross-sectional study design. Here you see the population, you take your controls and then your cases, and then, of the cases that were exposed to whatever, well, not all of the cases, you expose them, and then of the non-cases, you also expose them, and then you have a control for the second factor. So this, conceptually speaking, is how you would envision a cross-sectional study. Turner syndrome is associated with an blank genotype. So what is the genotype responsible for Turner syndrome? That would be an XO. So you only have one X chromosome. And then you don't have a Y or a second X. Klinefelter syndrome is associated with an blank genotype. So what's the genotype for Klinefelter syndrome? would be XXY. It's a trisomy defect. So you have one too many X's. The E(M) produces tissues within the epidermis, aids in the formation of neurons within the brain, and constructs melanocytes. That's what melanocytes is what gives pigment to skin. So what embryological germ layer does this? That would be the ectoderm. So here you have the ectoderm, and you can hardly tell, but color-coded here you can see the skin, hair on the skin, the brain and nervous system. These are all associated with the ectoderm. Okay. The E(M) produces tissue within the lungs, thyroid, and pancreas. So what embryological germ layer does this? That would be the endoderm. The endoderm. So the endoderm is like a light yellow. Here, you have like your GI tract, pancreas, and then, not illustrated would be your thyroid and some other glands. Okay. The M(M) aids in the production of muscle. So what germ layer aids in the production of muscle? That's right, you may have guessed it. Last but not least is your mesoderm. So here it's like a light blue. Here we have like a light blue muscle, some bones, subcutaneous tissue, your kidneys, like your heart. So all those things come from the mesoderm layer. Blank motor skills involve refined use of small muscles, like the ones that control fingers, hands, and thumbs. So what type of motor skills are we discussing here? That would be fine motor skills. So here you can see the progression of fine motor skills through the holding of like a writing device. Crayon is a cylindrical grasp. Then you have like think like a digital grasp. And then the holding of the pencil gets more refined as the human being develops. Blank motor skills involve use of larger muscles, like ones that control arms and legs. So that would be gross motor skills and things like running, galloping, horizontal jumping. Although we might take these motions for granted, they're all well-developed gross motor skills. And gross just means like large, on a large scale. The blank trimester. In the blank trimester, neurons and synapses begin to develop. So during what trimester of pregnancy do neurons and synapses develop? That would be during the first trimester. The first trimester. And here we see the embryo developing during the first trimester. And I don't know, it kind of looks like a tadpole. Myelination begins in the blank trimester, when a baby's brain is starting to become more complex. So during what trimester does myelination of the neurons begin? That would be during the second trimester. between 16 and 24 weeks. Okay. A blank cohort design looks back at events that have already taken place. So what type of cohort design does this? Looks back to the past. That would be a retrospective cohort design. So here, let's say the present time was 2000, the year 2000, and you go to a study from 1980 and you look, back then to study some particular factor. That would be retrospective. Like retro, old school, you're going back in time. So just take this diagram in. A blank cohort design follows a group of individuals over time. So what type of cohort design does this? That would be a prospective cohort design where you start at the present time. Again, let's say that, right, I know it's 2015, but let's say it was the year 2000. So we would go forward, continuing into the future. The blank gland affects the growth and development of the brain and regulates growth rates. So which gland, is involved with the development of the brain and regulating growth rates? That would be the thyroid gland. Okay. The blank gland triggers the growth spurt that occurs during adolescence. So which gland triggers adolescent growth spurts? That would be the pituitary gland. All right. So here we have, a highlight of the pituitary. Okay.